Dạ kêu mình ám dân được rồi đó. Mới thì lúc giờ ấm nước kia đây.
Được rồi, nghe rồi.
Nghe nổ, tôi có nghe đâu.
Cái lo nó lên rồi.
Nó lên rồi, bấm lại. Được rồi.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah.
Hold like that, or like you.
Here? It doesn't matter. Okay.
Tôi muốn để dòng anh ở trong này.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. And welcome back to you guys, and especially some new folks who are here to learn about the basics of Buddhism. It's funny because I'm like reading more and more literature about Buddhism, and I'm beginning to realize, oh man, well, two things that's like actually wrong with this lecture. And you guys be interested in listening to like what's wrong with the lecture in general, right? First off, my angle of attack has been wrong. I think it's not necessarily wrong, but I'll just tell you why it's been wrong. The whole concept of like teaching Buddhism, the basics of Buddhism in English. The issue is that with Buddhism, you can't passively receive it. You can't just like be a student in your chair and just like listen to the teacher tell you blah 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 blah. You can't just passively receive it. Especially with religion, I don't know, maybe some of you guys, and actually what I realized is that some of you guys are too young to realize it now. It has to be, and that's why there's actually a lot of like, when you come to temple, like there's very few young people, and a lot of old people, right? And I'm like, why is that always the case? Why is there like so few of you guys, but so many old people? Maybe because in general there are more older people than younger people, yes. But there's also this idea that there has to be this like genuine spiritual search. Does that make sense? It's like, it has to be this like inner realization on your part that you kind of want to learn more about this religion. And I wonder, like, why don't young people actually do that? And then I thought, oh yeah, it's because they haven't even lived life yet. How would they know? How would they know that this is something that they actually really need, right? Because you guys have so many things to worry about, like maybe passing the school year, passing your classes, getting a high school diploma, college diploma, afterwards getting a job and stuff like that. You don't have time. And then after you get a job, after you graduate college and get a job, then you have other worries to worry about. Then you gotta get married, then you gotta get a house, and then you gotta get a car, and then you have so many responsibilities. It's like, who has time for this, like, to sit down and say, oh man, I really need to search for the deeper truth about things, right? And that's why I feel like sometimes when I'm talking about all these things about Buddhism, like, it doesn't connect with you guys. Why? Well, because you haven't lived life yet. Like, how can you even, like, begin to think about the stuff that I'm asking you to think about, right? So it's like, it's fair if you guys, like, in the middle of this lecture, you start, like, zoning out and stuff, because it's like, it doesn't pertain to you. You would rather know stuff like what's going on with, like, Kylie Jenner on social media than, stuff that's here now. But it's not wrong. Like, okay, so I felt like I just wanted to articulate the fact that, like, hey, sometimes I do realize I'm not connecting with you. But I'm also thinking, like, what's my purpose then, right? So I'll tell you, like, what my purpose is, and maybe you can think about, like, what you want my purpose to be. It doesn't matter, but I think, like, my purpose is to fan the flame of inquiry for you. I'm gonna keep asking you guys questions to think about, right? That's it. I'm just gonna ask you guys questions to think about. It's up to you one day to realize, oh yeah, I still remember that one teacher who was like talking about like something in English, not Vietnamese, that like you guys are thinking about, and then maybe somewhere down the line, you know, you'll recognize like, oh, maybe I can return back to it. Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that like the point of this here, like there's no way that any of you guys are gonna walk away from any of these lectures or a series of lectures becoming like enlightened, right? And that's the idea of like Buddhism, to become enlightened. But what I am doing for you guys is just planting a seed. Okay, keep that in mind. There's no pressure for you to do anything, right? Simply just listen, and maybe through osmosis, which is like, well, not osmosis, but the more that you listen, the more that I'm able to plant this seed, and then it's something that you can return to as an adult when you're able to process a little bit more. But the thing, like for example, like just to go, and this is like the last part about this discussion. It's like, how can I tell you that as an adult, or most adults, they realize that something is missing in their lives? Like the spiritual aspect, right? A lot of people they go out partying every night or whatever. They live life, they live the fast life, whatever. They get a good job, they acquire a lot of money, they buy a lot of things, and then at the end of the day, they realize, oh man, this is not enough, something's missing. I don't know, I can't tell this to you, or I can tell it to you, but you guys won't understand it. Why? Because you haven't lived it. But by the time you get to like 20, 30, etc., you'll realize, you'll begin to gain stuff, you'll begin to like be part of society, and then you'll realize, oh yeah, something is missing, right? Something is really missing. And so, and I was watching this YouTube video about this monk who was like giving a lecture, and he's telling us about a series of sutras that he reads. And one of the sutras says it's like, it compares the lives of two people, right? And he says like, oh, modern medicine, people like take medicine, like we take it for granted that people live up to like 70 or 80 years old nowadays. Because back in like even my parents' time, like 60 was the highest number that you could reach, right? It's amazing. And then nowadays, 70 and 80 because of medicine, and then 90s to 100s because of like stuff like surgery. You could literally like replace your heart with somebody else's heart, or your liver with somebody else's liver, and the kidneys, and then you could live longer than ever, right? So nowadays people can live up to 100 years, which is crazy, that's egg. But the sutra says, it gives you a would you rather question, and here's the would you rather question. Would you rather be person A, who's able to live 100 years, doing everything that he's ever wanted to do? You know, the money, fame, all the things, money, fame, house, cars, wife, kids, everything. But not having lived one day, truly understanding the purpose of living. Why is he here to begin with? Or would you rather be that person who's lived one day, or even 1 year, just 1 year, but truly know like why you're here and what you're meant to do? Right? As a kid, I don't know. It might be a difficult choice for you, but when you get to the level of an adult, you begin to realize, oh yeah, all that superficial stuff, all the stuff about like looks, money, etc., it actually really doesn't matter. I rather actually search spiritually for like purpose, right, and stuff like that. So that's just like an opening idea about like how I'm thinking about like, this discussion, and you know, it's actually a process. Like the more that I think about this process, like and you guys are part of the process, so it's kind of they call this word meta, M-E-T-A. It's like stepping back and looking at what's happening overall. Like for example, right now you're just like sitting here and listening to me, right? But being meta means you guys being able to step back and look and say, oh yeah, here I am like sitting in this temple right now listening to this lecture. Like developmentally, not everyone, you gotta be like 6th, 7th grade, no, probably like 7th grade, 8th grade and higher to be able to really understand this word. But anyway, so that's just like my opening speech about this process, this you guys learning in general, okay? Here's the second thing. Most of the time, I always open my speech with, why Buddhism? I don't know if you guys like pay attention enough, but I always ask at the beginning of every speech, why Buddhism? And then I begin to realize, that's actually a bad question. Because you can actually step back one level further. If you want the answer to why Buddhism, you need to ask about a question, which is, why religion to begin with? Right? Like, why religion to begin with? And here's something really curious about religion. It's something that you are born into. You guys, well, because you're Vietnamese, or I'm assuming you're Vietnamese, you're born into this Buddhist religion. Right? If you're Muslim, you're born into a Muslim household. If you're Jewish, you're born into a Jewish household. But the other curious thing is that when you become whatever age, 18, or when you're able to think for yourself, religion becomes a choice. You get to choose which religion you want, right? It's not that way with any other feature. For example, your race. If you're born as Asian, you can't choose to be white, black, or Hispanic. You're Asian. And the same thing for the other people, right? If you're born Hispanic or Latin, you can't be like, yo, I'm Asian. Like, no, that's not you. I mean, maybe, but it goes into a different debate. Like, if you're born male, can you become female? Nowadays, you can't. But but I think religion is one of the first things that you're born into, and then as you grow older, you begin to think, oh yeah, I have a choice, right? And so, if you understand like what's the purpose of religion and the function of religion, then you being able to, what I want you guys ultimately to understand is that like, don't come to sit here on Sunday because your parents tell you to, right? Come to sit here because you're choosing to, and you're choosing to really understand like what's going on. Yeah, and I mean, I also would push you guys to study other religions, just to see what they're about, right? And that's actually like interestingly, a lot of like adults, by the time they hit 20s or something, and they realize, oh snap, something's missing about my life. They start to look at different religions and see like, oh, okay, like Hinduism has something, you know, Islam has something, Christianity, it's very popular. You see people wearing the cross, you know, doing the cross sign and stuff like that. And it's interesting because what young people tend to do is they pick and choose. They're like, you know, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to believe in a heaven or hell. Okay, I'll take that. I kind of like the meditation aspect. I'll take that, etc., etc. What they call, there's a name for that, right? When you pick and choose, and it's actually, you know, to some extent you can do that, but to some extent you can't do that, right? And the idea is that like certain techniques or traditions of religion, from one religion to another, you can't just like, the analogy is this. Religion is not like, you guys ever go to the beach? And then the wave comes, you dip your feet, and then or you try to like put your feet out, and then when you see the big wave comes, like you kind of step back a little bit. Like, that's not what religion's function is, right? It shouldn't be nearly as superficial. Religion should be like this entire like river or stream that like not engulfs your life, but guides your life, right? So it should be of a lot of importance, but you should. I'm not telling you to be a nun or a monk or anything, right? It's just something that should guide you, but you can't just pick and choose, right? And you have to understand like, or you got to be like really committed to something like that. Okay, so that's that. Let me go into what is religion, and then we can get to why Buddhism really quickly. Okay. If you notice, I think to some extent you guys know, like you know what Christianity is, right? It's Jesus Christ, the cross, etc. I'm sure you guys have seen Jewish people, or the Judaism is the faith, and there's Jewish people who follow Judaism, and then there's Muslims who follow Islam, and then there's Hindus who follow Hinduism. So it's just like, and that's just like the top 4 religions out there, right? And then there's Buddhism and stuff like that. And you're like, if I ask you, what's religion? And why is there so many? Then then you're like, Well, then you start to think. I want you guys to start to think like, what is religion? Like, why is this such a major aspect of daily life and society, right? And so I'll just give you this definition. I find it particularly interesting, okay? It's a set of spiritual practices that are built on visions of the nature, reality, and the final good. I don't think you will understand any of that. What I do think you will understand is this idea of the final good. Think about any religion, right? What's the main selling point of them? It's the end. Because, well, yeah, it's the end, right? Nobody has ever died and come back to life. Nobody knows what's on the other side. We all die. It's like a fact of life, right? Whether you're ready for it or not, we all die. You could die tomorrow, you could get hit by a car, right? And so the older you get, religion becomes more important because then the idea of death comes to you. So the idea of religion is that it sells this idea of what happens at the end. That's why so, to some extent, why so many people gravitate towards it. Because they need to know, right? We as human beings are very curious, but we also truly want to know what happens when we die, right? And religion seems to be the pathway that's pointing to oh, okay. If you, I don't actually know what each of the different religions say, right? But they all have a certain version of heaven. They all have a certain version of hell, right? And then the story goes that when you die, you go before somebody who judges you based on the good actions and bad actions, and then they send you to heaven or hell, something like that, right? That's the general. I'm generalizing, but it's to some extent what all. This is the thing that all religions have in common. They tell you, they paint you a story about what happened at the end. So that's something really interesting for you guys to consider, right? So then my question is this. Oh, and the analogy is, imagine a mountain, right? We're all trying to get to the top of the mountain, but there's many ways to get up there. Because a mountain is 360, right? Let's just say you're trying to get to the top of this cup. You could go from this angle, you can go from this angle or this angle, or you can go a circular path, it doesn't matter. All these point to the same top, the point, right? So one could argue it doesn't matter what religion you're in, as long as you're in a religion, because you're ultimately all trying to get to the ultimate goal, which is to some extent heaven, right? How do you choose? How do you know which religion is one for you? Because like I said before, even if you're born into one, you need to actively think and question and know how to choose, right? And so, go back to the function of religion. First, it tells you a story about what happens in the end, and actually, think about the end very quickly. Heaven. We all want to go to heaven. Why? What's so special about heaven? That's something curious to understand, right? And then I would ask you this question. What's the assumption in heaven? What do you assume happens in heaven? If you've heard this word, you know what it means. But what do you assume happens in heaven? Is there pictures of, you have a picture in your head, right? It's blue skies, green fields, you're running around, everybody's happy, you see all your friends, all your families, right? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what your picture of heaven is, but all religions have some version of it, right? That's because all religions, and I should step back and preface that. I'll try not to generalize, but the idea is that I'm not speaking about religion in total, but obviously different religions have their different idiosyncrasies. But religion tries to solve a problem, okay? And the problem it tries to solve is the problem of suffering. Because think about it. When you go to heaven, is there such thing as suffering? No. There's almost no mention of suffering ever in heaven, right? Or in that nice spiritual place in the end. And so that's the problem that's trying to solve. And so this tells us then that this allows us to understand, okay, so this is what religion is trying to solve. It's trying to solve this problem of suffering. And that's why people gravitate towards it. This allows us to evaluate like which path is the most effective path to get to the top, okay? And actually, like, the book that I'm reading speaks of like 3 criteria, okay? 3 criteria that maybe you guys can really well, it gives analogies too, okay? 3 criteria to tell like what's a good religion, maybe not a good, I wouldn't call it religion at this point. I'll say what's a good path, right? Here's the 3 criteria. First, a full and accurate picture of the range of suffering. So, basically the path / religion has to tell you like how suffering is happening. Very much like a doctor, right? When you go to the doctor and you say that you're sick, but you really can't, like nothing like, let's just say it's not like a physical thing, you just like feel very ill, but you don't know what it is, what does the doctor have to do? Give you like a round of different tests, right? Like let's just say it's not like a cut on your hand, that's easy, it's easily visible, but it's something much deeper within your body. And let's just say you have, well, I don't want to say anything bad, but maybe like a heart condition that you never know, or something inside you internally. The doctor has to be able to give a full diagnosis of like what's going on. Just like the religion or the path has to be able to give a full diagnosis of like the range of suffering, right? Because that's the problem it's trying to solve. Second thing is, it needs, the path / religion needs to have a correct like analysis of the causes of suffering. So that, and going back to the example of like going to the doctor, right? Let's just say you're feeling, okay, let's just say you have a fever, right? You have a fever. And the doctor's like, here, take an Tylenol and an Advil to address your fever. That's the symptom, it's not the cause, right? And it's deeper, it's like saying like, just because he gives you a pill, it'll make you better temporarily, but if he doesn't fix the fact that you actually have the flu or something else, then that fever is going to keep coming back, and you're going to keep taking pills. But are you really going to get deeply better? No. So the second piece is that you need an accurate analysis of like what's the cause of suffering. And lastly, the last thing about the religion is that does the path like actually remove the suffering at its source? Like, does it get down to the root level? So those are the 3 criteria. So I'll zoom out. I'll show you. What makes a good religion, or what makes a good path, right? Here's the 3 things. Do they have a good picture of what is suffering? Do they have a correct analysis of like the root cause of it? And do they provide a solution to end suffering? Okay, that's like that's the mark, that's the criteria for what a good religion. Well, it's just good is subjective, but according to this, like what makes a good religion, like why people should follow it. And so the idea is that Buddhism, right, meets these 3 criteria because it's formulated as a pathway out of suffering. Does that make sense? It's like the idea, the message is the entire idea about Buddhism is that it's a message about leading you out of suffering and towards like enlightenment. And so, and it was interestingly, if you guys understand, like, well, we have the Buddha behind us, right? But like, why is he such a like important figure? Like, you know, like, okay, he's the Buddha. Just because he's the Buddha, right? That's like circular logic. Like, to truly deeply understand, he's the Buddha because, and you should be able to articulate this, right? He was the one who, you could call him the doctor. He discovered this path. He discovered like, oh, he discovered like the nature of our reality, which is this idea that we are always in a state of suffering. And next week, I'll explain to you guys more, if you guys come back, the nature of this reality. But first, he was the first one who said, he steps back and said, oh man, this lifetime, this 100 years of life, it's meaningless, right? Because you have to understand actually what's the true nature. The true nature of this is that we're always suffering. We're always getting older. We're always getting sick. We're always going to die. We're always going to be born back again. He thought about this, right? And then he also said, but wait, there's a path. And this is why he became enlightened. He figured out the Noble Eightfold Path, right? And he gave us this pathway to say, hey, if you want a way out of suffering, here's the way out, right? And so this is like, so ultimately, this is all to answer this question of like, why Buddhism? By the way, I just wanted to practice this. Buddhism is not really like, you must believe this or else. And usually the or else is that you're going into a very bad place that's not heaven. I'm just saying, right? That's not Buddhism, right? Rather, and also, I don't know if you noticed, but I have noticed this. I always ask myself, like, how come Buddhist people have never tried to convert other Buddhist people? Does that make sense? You rarely see like monks walking around the street saying like, hey, join Buddhism, join Buddhism, join Buddhism. I don't know. I've never seen it before. Maybe they exist out there, but it's very interesting. And here's the reason why, right? It's really just a path, and it's really up to you to choose to walk the path or not, right? No one can really force it on you. No one says like, if you don't follow this path, you're all going to a very bad place. It's not like that. And so in the words of the Buddha, here's what he said, and this is my last sentence, okay? It says, you yourselves must strive. The Buddhas are only teachers, the meditative one who practice the path of release from the bonds of evil. So it's very interesting. Buddhism says it's not on anybody else but you. The Buddha found the path, here's the path. If you want liberation, if you want to end suffering, you have to walk it yourself. You have to understand yourself. And so, going back to the beginning of this lecture, when I say, oh, no matter how much I tell you, you guys won't be enlightened. You will be enlightened when you choose to walk the path yourself. All I can do, my function, is to plant that seed within you to begin questioning and begin to push yourself onto the correct path. Does that make sense? Okay. If it doesn't make sense, well, sorry. Maybe I wasn't clear enough and I'll come back next week, but thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. If not, we'll come back next week to learn more about reality. Thank you. Bye.